DJ Event Planner will change the way you manage and run your business. Streamline all of your procedures and software into one easy-to-manage system. DJ Event Planner, the ultimate online planning tool.
Good evening, everyone. It is Monday night. It is time to talk DJ, and tonight I've got a special guest. We're going to be talking to DJ Kilma. Good evening, Kilma.
Good evening. How are you?
I am great. It's just exciting to be able to get back and talk. And you don't have your little buddy with you tonight.
No, the little guy is hanging out with Dad.
He's with Dad, so that means that the house is quiet, and
yes.
It's a great time to talk about mixing tonight.
Yes. Fun times.
This will be fun. This is a topic that I get a lot of questions on, where people are, when we do a mixing show, and then all of a sudden it's like they get bombarded with questions on what and how and do I need to, and all these different things. So I think it's kind of a great spot to just kind of jump in and get a kind of a basic of what all this mixing thing's about.
Yes, like I was saying before, I had to do a little bit of research because as a DJ myself and a dancer, you just kind of feel the music, and then people ask you, what are you doing? And you're like, yeah, what am I doing? So the basics of understanding music mixing, I would say there's probably three main things you want to consider. The structure of your track and counting beats, which you've probably heard people say before.
Certainly.
Matching the BPM, also known as the beats per minute that your song is in. And EQing, so adjusting your bass, your highs, your mids. So trying to keep this as simple as possible, even though it's a bit of math. Most music, the time signature for like dance and hip hop and country is 4/4. Mm-hmm. So when you hear people talk about going with the one, the first bar of the first beat, they're talking about literally that first kick drum that you hear in your music when you first push the play button. When we talk about bars, we're actually talking about 4 of those beats. And when we're talking about phrases, we're talking about 8 bars or 32 beats in a phrase. So when you're counting beats, that might look like 1, 2, 3, 4 for your bar. Mm-hmm. And if you're counting that bar down like 8 bars, you might be going 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, and 4, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 8. Now, I can give you a little example with music. I can try to count along, shall we? Sure.
Let's see how this will work. We may have to adjust the volume of the music over the microphone, but let's play with it.
Yeah. So we go 1, 2. Oh wait, did I push play? 1. No. Yes. Yeah. I think you guys can hear it, but I can't. That's what's going on.
Okay.
So
that'll make it a little more difficult.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 3, 4, 4, 2, 3, 4, and then, so on and so on. So we would go up to about 8 bars to make that phrase. And the reason we talk about phrases is because in dance music especially, you'll notice each phrase will introduce a new instrument. So say, for example, you're dancing to your favorite tune, and maybe you're not actually counting those bars, but it's going to introduce a new lyric, a new melody, a new kick drum. You might switch up your dance moves, right? Mm-hmm. So in this particular example, and then if we fast forward to the next phrase,
the explosion is added.
What's that?
The explosion is added.
Yes, exactly. So, if you're paying attention to your music, and I really recommend you do this with the music that you listen to a lot, you'll be able to count those beats and understand, oh, yes, a new instrument is being introduced into it. So in dance music especially, and this is what I really highly recommend practicing beat matching with, because a lot of the times you can find music that doesn't have any lyrics in it and you can just focus on the beats. That first kick drum, that beat tends to be, on the 1, 2, 3, 4, whereas in hip hop, you might be listening to the snare at the 2nd and 4th count. Yes. So, pro tip, it is really important that you do listen to your music and understand where these changes are happening, because while most music is 4x4, like I was saying before about the time signatures, tracks are not always laid out the same. So there's many things you might want to consider, like the build up, the breakdown, when the vocals come in. For example, if you are mixing track A into track B, but track A has 4 bars where the breakdown is, and track B has 8 bars, if you're trying to use those layouts, then if you bring your beat in on the one, it's not going to make sense with the next track. So again, I really recommend you listen to your music and figure out how these beats are laid out before you play a live gig.
Sure. So you're really wanting to line up the phrases to a point.
Yeah, absolutely. That first beat of that first bar on the following phrase. So if you're listening to, I should just give you an example with mixing. So assuming that where you're dropping your beats, which is the 1 on the 1, you're going to take in consideration of, okay, this is where we might have to edit some stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be a little tougher when you can't hear, so we'll play with it.
Yeah. Well, let's jump into mixing. So that would be the second part. When you've got a set of turntables, say digital turntables, you've got your jog wheel and you've got your pitch fader. So your jog wheel is going to allow you to manually speed up or slow down your music, but it's not actually going to affect the BPM, whereas the pitch fader will affect the BPM, so your beats per minute. With house music, that can range from 120 beats per minute to 130 beats per minute. So, for example, if one of your tracks is made at 124 beats per minute and the other track is made at 126, you're going to have to slow down or speed up the track that you're bringing in. So say, for example, track A, the one that you're mixing in your headphones, is 124 BPM, and the track B that's played out to everybody else is 126 BPM. This is where you can use the jog wheel to either speed up or slow down your music to figure out, okay, is this matching with the track that's playing out to everybody else? Your pitch control is where you're actually going to change the BPM of the music. So if you push your jog wheel ahead and you notice, okay, this makes more sense, the beats match up when I'm playing, and if I speed it up, then I know I need to speed up my pitch as well. So when you do that, I like to think of it like 2 people running. Okay, so if you've got 2 people running and one person's going 12 miles an hour and you're going 10 miles an hour, if you go 12 miles an hour, you're not going to necessarily match up with them. So maybe you have to speed yourself along initially and then slow down to the same BPM,
sure,
the same speed that they're going. So the jog wheel is kind of like that initial push to get you a little bit faster ahead and line those beats up, whereas the pitch is what's going to
hold it at
keep that initial speed that you want it to be at.
Interesting. I've played with it a little bit, but I haven't. Being a wedding DJ, it's something I've been adding to my show now that the crowds are being more responsive to more of that beat mixing idea and lining things up.
That's a really good point that you bring up, because there are so many different ways that we mix music, right? So hip hop DJs might cut and juggle their beats, creating their own like little live remixes, where an electronic music DJ might actually blend those beats together. Or, a wedding DJ, you could be jumping from one BPM to the next. So maybe you're using different effects on your mixer to mix in the next track, right?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, that's definitely become a bigger thing, is using an effect, a backspin effect as an example, especially when I have two tempos that are so vastly different. And of course there's slam cuts and things like that.
And you got to take those,
but you have to know your music.
those song requests sometimes, right?
Precisely, yep. You need to play my song next. Okay.
I was in the bathroom when you played my Rihanna song.
Yeah, play it again. How many times?
But another thing to keep in mind is when you are, if you're blending beats like this, where you're listening to it in the headphones, there are many different ways people like to do it. Sometimes people like to put one headphone on one ear, leave the other one off, so they can cue up the track they want to play in their headphones while they listen to their monitor out loud, and they try to match the beats that way. Some people like to mix all in their headphones. Maybe they don't have a monitor, or maybe they just find they mix better this way. So on your mixer, most mixers have the option to queue up both tracks, so you can hear what everybody else is listening to, and you can hear what music you want to bring in to the track. So with that little mixer function, you can also listen to one track louder or quieter by switching it back and forth. So if you'll play around on your mixer, you should be able to see these options to queue up each track. And with that, when you're blending those tunes, you might be trying to figure out, okay, well, what am I listening to? Some people are listening to that kick drum. Some people are listening to the hi-hats. Maybe they're listening to the melody or the vocals and trying to make sense of where does this fit? Does this make sense? Is this when the next beat is supposed to come? And that's where, using that jog wheel to slow down or speed up is a nice way to just kind of quickly see, is my music too fast or too slow? You might not have it right on beat right away, but I find this really helps me to almost troubleshoot, okay, where is my BPM supposed to be?
So let's talking about queuing and such, and specifically when you're trying to line two songs up. Do you prefer your preferred method, headphones, or do you prefer the monitor speaker, or how do you like to function when you're doing that?
That is a good question. If I am at a venue where I can get those monitors nice and loud and they're on both sides of me, then being able to use the monitors can work really perfectly. However, sometimes, a headliner wants a monitor on one side and maybe you're partially deaf on that side, so you end up mixing in your headphones. Or maybe you don't have a monitor at all and the headphones work for you. In worst case scenarios, sometimes you're mixing in your headphones because there's a delay of the sound, and if you try to match it with what's on the monitor, that's not actually true to what's playing live. Yeah. Hopefully that isn't something that you run into. Recently, I have found mixing in my headphones is actually quite perfect, especially for my lounge night where we start things off quite quiet and then slowly bring it up. So it's nice to be able to mix in different situations depending on what you might run into.
I'm going to detour a little bit here. Let's talk about the monitor side of it, because that is something I've seen used at shows, but I personally have never used a monitor. And I guess my first question is do you have those? I mean, they can be pretty loud. Are they playing at that volume the whole night, or do you bring those up and down as needed?
Right. So at a professional show, you should have access to the monitor so that you can adjust how loud or how quiet it is. Sometimes you run into situations where you've got headliners playing, and I mean, they've been playing for years and years and years, and they are quite deaf. So it's nice to have that option to turn down your monitor, or maybe throughout the evening, some DJs find their ears are not as finely tuned and they start turning their monitors up. I don't recommend to do that if you can and avoid it. This is where mixing in your headphones might be really helpful for somebody that is trying to save their hearing too. But I know for me, I am personally losing some of the hearing in one of my ears. So if the monitor's on the proper side, it's super helpful. If it's on the wrong side, I might as well just mix in my headphones.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean by that. One ear is definitely because of years of having a headphone on the one side. We did the single ear, and I just beat my ears up. I'm gonna because I've never used these. I have questions for you.
Yeah.
With the monitors now, are those just used for mixing, or when you're doing a show at a specific venue, will they give you an idea of how loud it is out on the floor, or is that really not in those larger events? The two don't coincide.
No, absolutely not. Thankfully, because sometimes when you're mixing and you're using a monitor, it's going to be louder than what everybody else hears because maybe it's still early in the evening and you don't want to have the music so loud that people can't hear themselves. Whereas when more people fill the room and more people are talking, then it makes sense to turn the master up for everyone else. So where you'll also see monitors is for like live events, your guitarist,
Certainly,
your singer, because what they hear versus what you hear can definitely be a delay of, what's going on within a room. So monitors they're pretty important for a lot of performers, just so, you know what you sound like, because if you're a singer or an MC, maybe you can't hear, does my voice come across clearly across the system, depending on what kind of venue you're in. So it's nice to have that option.
Yeah. Interesting. I've toyed around, especially when I'm doing some larger high school dances, and I feel that because I have 300 kids in front of me and I'm trying to do some things, I ended up using my headphones, and I'm thinking to myself, maybe having a monitor just to be able to hear exactly what's coming across the speakers would be a nice thing. Because what I'm hearing through the headphones, while accurate, that it's just, I don't know, I find it cumbersome to do that. I do it, but it's just cumbersome. So interesting. Okay, well, thank you.
It's nice to rock out when you can hear the fullness of what you're doing too.
And then I think back to it's like, okay, I've damaged my ears enough over the years of playing loud music, and it's like, okay, now having a couple of 12-inch, 15-inch speakers blaring back at me is like, oh, do I want to?
Yeah, so you'd have one going through your master, and then like I have one going through my booth, so I can adjust both volumes without hurting myself or others. Which is nice.
Very nice. Okay, so where were we at before I took us on a tangent?
Oh, that's okay. So what we're listening to, so like the kick drums, the hi-hats, the melody, the lyrics. And then the other thing, because we're already talking about hi-hats, your highs, mids, lows, is actually blending that music. Now, this is where it gets a little technical, and I think that, while you're practicing, it's really a great idea to record yourself, to listen back, to see what works and what doesn't. Because sometimes when we're mixing music and you've got two tracks going at full, even if you're not redlining, some of those tracks can compete with one another, right?
Sure.
So your bass, maybe you've got heavy bass in both tracks and they're both going, and it's just making things really muddy.
Yes.
So when I've dropped the beat on the one and I've beat matched them and I'm ready to bring a beat in, a lot of the times what I'll do is I will turn down my bass on the track that I'm bringing in. And then as I'm bringing in that new tune, maybe the master tune, I'm slowly bringing down. Maybe I'm slowly bringing the bass down. Maybe I'm slowly bringing, my mids down. And then this way, when I do fully put on the bass on, that track I'm trying to mix in, and maybe I completely take the bass out on the other, it's a nice smooth transition, and it's, they're not competing with one another. So you're hearing, maybe horns or drums or something in that one track, just ever so quietly to keep that ambiance going. But the track you've blended in is now, at full stream, and you've got that nice transition going. So yeah, EQing your bass, your highs, your mids, all that fun stuff.
So now when I've been doing videos with some controllers, they talk about a what is it, a full cut? Is that what they're referring to? Something to that effect. But basically that they can turn that, let's say the mid, and it can be basically turned completely off. Is that really what you're talking about here? Is that turning it all the way down?
Yeah, you can definitely do that. Sometimes that sounds great. Sometimes it sounds a little strange. Sometimes you'll see, you'll kind of notice when very passionate DJs are doing it, because they're using a lot of elbow.
They're making a big display. Just gonna turn this with this big wrench to show me turning.
Throw your elbow into it. So it's so funny because it's just like a little tink.
Yeah, exactly. It's really that, but. Because I know on the controller that I use on a regular basis, it also has a filter where I can go and filter down to just say that bass line from one track. And I played with that a little bit, and sometimes, as you say, it can sound really good. And the next, combining it with a different song, it's like, oh, this is just horrible. And I'm not sure if that's maybe something we're going to get into, maybe talking about here is a little bit of the key of the song. I don't know if that is what was wrong, but sometimes it just doesn't work.
Yeah, you've got so many different keys that these tracks are produced in, C minor, D major, what have you. And the interesting thing is sometimes you'll have a beat completely match and you're EQing it quite nicely. However, it's in a particular key and the keys clash. So there are programs out there, if you don't know music theory, if you don't know what key something is made in, there are programs like Recordbox that you can analyze the key. There is an even better program, or I guess it depends on your opinion. It's called Mixed in Key. Yeah. You can purchase it. I can't remember exactly how much it is, but it's still cheaper than all your other DJ gear. And there's a whole wheel of which tunes in which keys sound good together. Again, more math and letters. However, some of the best mixes you'll listen to have all been mixed in key. And so when you're mixing, if you're noticing, so my beats matched, I put it in on the one, I'm EQing it well, but it still sounds off, chances are you're having key clashes. So, that's something to consider, especially for electronic music DJs that are making mixes, these hour-long mixes that they want to push out as promo. Whereas, maybe as a wedding DJ, you can get away with stuff. And like you said, use these effects, these filters, these echoes to bring in music. So it just depends what you're trying to achieve, but keeping the key in mind, I mean, that's very ear pleasing.
Yeah, that's what I've definitely heard. That and I'm more the club people seem to be more concerned about that than I as a wedding DJ. But it's something that I've been trying to pay attention to a little bit more as I've been looking at it, and I've actually printed out the little chart with the different keys around. And as I'm looking at the software after Mixed in Key has gone and identified everything, so now it's like, ooh, that's that key. Well, that one and the BPM are close, and ooh, look at their keys are compatible. I could mix from one to the next, and then I listen to it, and sometimes they work, and sometimes for some reason they just still don't work because of. Maybe it's just how they where the beat is. If they're kind of maybe bringing a bass in on an off beat, or they're doing a instead of a 1 2 3 4, they're doing a 1 2 and 4 kind of a thing.
Yes, and that happens. I have those tracks where it's like, the time signature is 4/4, but they switch it up. So instead of the breakdown being 32 beats, it's actually 31 or something. It doesn't make sense, and I'm sure the producer's like, haha, gotcha. So
You guys
listening to your music and practicing recording, that will definitely help you get better at, and that's where like looping comes in handy too, right? Using the effects and looping your music. The things we can do now that we don't have to use vinyl, hey?
Yeah, it is definitely changed the game with a lot of the tools that I'm using at my shows. Even my high school and the weddings this past summer, I'm doing things with that just weren't even on the radar, just weren't capable with vinyl. You mentioned, of course, the time, the 4/4 time. And as a wedding DJ, there's actually, there's times where I'm playing songs, whether it's a country song or in my case, an old time song every once in a while that's coming in even at a different beat with a 3/4 time frame, or a 2/2 or a 2/4. So it's like, there's just so many different time signatures with different songs that you get back to. You really have to know your music to know what you can do and what you can't do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Or even like your track won't start on that first beat, right?
Yeah.
If you're thinking like, this is how we do it, and then boom, now your beat hits.
Exactly.
So if you don't realize that's not your first beat when they start singing, then it's figuring out, okay, so when would I hit that vocal before that beat? Or should I just cue it up at that one beat? Or should I echo out my last track and just throw this one in, right? So there's so many different ways that you can do it.
But the big thing, I think, and I've found this as I've been playing with this, is that if I've got a phrase, if I'm coming out of a song, and then you say we're going to be going into this is how we do it with that, is that if I catch this song and I'm trying to line up a beat one of a measure, and if it's like the third measure of a phrase or the seventh measure, it wasn't exactly right. And then if I start this one at the first beat of a phrase and they don't line up right, it sometimes can really sound dorky because it's like you're waiting for that natural flow you talked about at the beginning of that 32-beat change up. And now I've just messed it up because now I've made it, instead of a 32-beat, it's a 28-beat change up or a 24-beat change up. And it's just like, that does sound bad. I never thought about that too much until I started playing with it.
Yeah, and I think like, I know when I first started DJing and people were trying to teach me, they either didn't know the terminology or, I'm a visual person. So if you can tell me this stuff and that's great, but if I can't see it, I don't know what you're talking about. So that can make it really tricky too. But once you realize, as a dancer, I knew when I was dancing, okay, this other instruments coming in. Okay, now this new verse has started. I'm going to switch up my dance moves. I know this is a new bar. I think for some of us, the reason that we don't count is because we listen to music a lot.
Yep.
We kind of, in the back of our mind, understand the changes of it. So when we do start playing, some of us know what we're doing, but we don't know how we know. Yep. And I think that's the tricky part to teaching DJs, because we have so many different ways of learning this stuff. So that's why I say listen to tunes that you really love, count those beats, and it's going to make a lot more sense to you.
And I think when you say count the beats, I mean, I practice literally in the car, song on the radio, counting right through the whole thing and trying to find the phrase, and then it's like, oh, wait a second, that was instead of being an 8 measure phrase, that was a bridge for the song, and that was only 4 measures.
Yes.
Which can happen. And just the idea of understanding that generally something's going to happen either every 4 measures or every 8 measures. Most time it's a 32-beat phrase, but not all the time. And understanding that concept that it's kind of like the weather in our part of the world. You don't like it, you just wait a little bit and it's going to change. The song is going to change every so often. It's just the way music is written, and that's kind of neat once you understand it.
Exactly. And I like that you said major. And then bars are also called measures, right? All the terminology.
Oh, exactly. Exactly. It took me back with the very first time we had the conversation. It was like back to 8th grade band. It's like, wait, I didn't pay attention that day.
Why didn't I? For a short period there, I could actually read music, and I wish that I kept with that because I don't know what I'm looking at now.
It's like, is that a quarter note? Is that a whole note? What is it? I don't know.
Just stuck with it.
The times, and yet for what we do, there's a lot of this information we just don't need because, as you say, it becomes kind of a natural thing to be able to listening to a song and you just know that this just is the third measure of this phrase, or it's the sixth measure of this phrase, and it's 7 2 3 4 8 2 3 change, kind of a thing.
Yes.
And you just get that feeling after you've heard and played music. And even some new songs when you're listening to those, and it's like, oh yeah, I can pretty much feel this is and here that was the eighth measure of this phrase, and it's going to change right now.
Yes, exactly. And isn't that the wonderful thing as you get better at that, listening, like you build more confidence when you do start playing out and it's a new track that you haven't played before. You get a general understanding of, okay, well, this is potentially what's going to happen. And if it doesn't, I know I can loop this bar and that bar and everything will be fine, and I'll echo it out and no one will know the difference.
And then, of course, we get into this nasty thing they call breaks, when there's a song and all of a sudden it has a break in there for especially if you're doing music video. But that's another story.
Yes, yes, the breakdown.
Yeah, all of a sudden it's like, no, don't do these things. Don't change it. Just give me a beat and stay with it. Good stuff. So, what's fall looking like in the world of DJ Kilma? Are you playing and such? Because last year you were able to take the kind of fall off because of having a little guy.
Yes.
Where does the road take you?
So a couple months ago, I was introduced to a lovely local business, and they got me on playing on their patio for like all of the summer. So we've been running it for the last 2 months every Saturday. Music starts at 8. You got your nice little saucy dinner rush, and as the energy goes up, it kind of turns into that patio nightclub thing.
Nice.
So we've been doing that we'll see. We might do it all of September as well. We'll see. The weather has been kind of weird in Winnipeg. It's been really, really hot, and now it's getting a little chilly, so we'll see how things go. Lots of vlogs and blogs and madness, but good stuff. I've definitely been able to run the passion, even though I have the little guy, more efficient with my time, and I get really creative.
Yes.
How to get things done. So that's been working out nicely.
So if people want to find you mentioned the blogs and vlogs and such, where can they go to check those out?
Yeah. So if you go to don'tkilmavibe.com, my blogs and vlogs are up there, or you can check out the YouTube channel, which I'll leave a comment below so that you guys can find me. And of course, all the social media world is at Kilma Music.
And we'll put those links in the description below, so you guys can all find those and be able to check out the vlog. I've seen noticing you've been much busier with that recently and putting some things up and such, and being a little saucy with your it's kind of neat to watch the progression as you've been doing videos over the years and how they change and such. As I do see that with all of our videos, but it's been kind of cool to watch, and I've really appreciated that. Good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, the controversial ones, it's gonna, things are gonna be a little tricky, but you bring on the most interesting people that are also like-minded, like you guys. So yeah, I love it. It's fun.
It's a lot of fun. Great stuff. Again, links will be in the description below. We will be coming back to you in just a little bit with our second show tonight. So just keep watching. Well, links down there for that one. You can click on that, and we will see you at 10 o'clock Eastern. Thanks for watching.